Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. I'm in the studio in Manchester. Always nice to be here, joined by you this morning. Sorry we're a little bit late, had a few problems with Virgin Media. So anyway, let's get into the show. Lots to discuss this morning. We're going to be talking about Rasmus Hojlund, Harry Maguire, and to be honest with you, it's a news show. We probably want to move on from it, but there is a lot of stuff coming out from Mason Greenwood, that story from yesterday, today as well. A few other bits to get involved with as well. I'm still predicting a big story from United today, or maybe tomorrow, to move us on from the Greenwood story, which is just going to keep getting regurgitated and new opinions. I think it's the Telegraph who are talking about potential comments from family and stuff like that, championship interest, Italy, etc. We'll delve into all that, of course. Let's start off with some positive news, though. Obviously, we've been hotter than the sun in relation to Rasmus Hojlund. I did say to you a couple of days ago that he'll be back for the Forest game. This is now growing with momentum. More and more outlets are picking up on this, that Rasmus Hojlund will be back involved for the game against Forest at the weekend. Remember, we are a football club. That's what underpins everything. We've had a bad start to the season. I think we saw when Martial came on against Spurs on Saturday, we were better with somebody who can play at number 9, and I think we'll be much better with Rasmus Hojlund back involved. Well, involved, not back involved. Lee Timms, welcome to the Members Club. Also, a bit of transfer news as well. You may well have seen from Fabrizio Romano that West Ham are about to complete the signing of that Stuttgart centre-back. There was some talk yesterday that he might have failed a medical. Why is that important for United? Well, obviously, if that deal had fallen through, maybe Harry Maguire could have ended up at West Ham. Fabrizio has said this morning it's very quiet on the Harry Maguire front. Effectively, West Ham was a bid that was accepted by United, but at the moment it's very quiet. Does that mean Harry Maguire stays at Manchester United? Well, at the moment, you'd have to lean towards that, because that's the most evidential point we have, is that he's a Man United player and West Ham pulled out of the deal because Maguire didn't really fancy it. However, it is, 10 days to go until the end of this transfer window. It's very clear that Man United fans don't want Maguire at the club. It's very clear that Ten Hag doesn't want him at the club. And it's very clear that Maguire didn't want to go to West Ham. So, you know, when you're trying to solve that problem, United fans don't want him. Ten Hag doesn't want him. He didn't want to go to West Ham. He's going to lose his England place. I mean, Colwill is playing for Chelsea every week at the moment, and he's better than Maguire just by playing. Maguire needs a move. Can he find a move to somewhere better than West Ham? And that's the challenge. I'm going to say this. Why not? If he stays at Man United, then he is prioritising his wallet over playing football, and he should lose his England place. Southgate is timid. He's a lot of things. But he should be dropping Maguire. You know, if I was Gareth Southgate, I'd be picking up the phone and saying, you had a chance to go and play first-team football for a Premier League club. I've got a young centre-back who's left-footed, who I think is better than you, and he's playing week in, week out for Chelsea. And you want me to keep picking you? Mate, you're clearly staying at United where you're not wanted for a wage. You're out. But whether that'll happen or not, I don't know. Can I get a shout-out for myself and my wife, who are having first child due on Tuesday, says Matthew. You've sort of done it. But congratulations, and you've had your shout-out. Should United only enter into performance-based contracts with new players to avoid underperformers, says Gear? Well, it's something that we may need to look at done. I agree with Andreas. Maguire could have done well at West Ham, and he's chosen not to do it. Look, I still think there's an opportunity for Harry Maguire to leave Manchester United. He's got to... I don't like the witch hunt. I don't like that. But I think you've got to say it for what it is. There's no reason to protect a player on 200 grand a week who won't leave the club to go and play football, and when he's not wanted. I mean, I have very little sympathy for a player like that. Of course, they've got a contract, and if they want to honour that contract and, you know, run that contract down and earn money, then he's got every right to do that. But we as a football club that's trying to move forward has got every right to have an opinion about people that are holding us back. When a manager doesn't want you and the fans don't want you, you should go. You should go. Of course you could. But it would be wrong of me not to say that, you know, just because Donny van der Beek's more liked, Donny van der Beek's doing exactly the same thing. 2 months we've been waiting to get rid of Donny van der Beek. If he'd gone a month ago, I truly believe Amrabat would be here now. So it's not just Harry Maguire. You could say Dean Henderson's in this position. You could say Brandon Williams is in this position. You can say Donny van der Beek's in this position. I mean, what was the truth behind Scott McTominay? Did we reject the bid or did he reject the bid? So these players have got every right to put themselves first, but we've got every right to say you're holding the club back and you should just go. So, but it's not just Harry Maguire. Let's not, just because Maguire's probably not as popular as Donny's doing exactly the same thing. In fact, you could argue that Donny is causing us more issues than Harry at the moment, because if Harry goes, we've still got Varane, Martinez and Lindelof. With Donny not going, we've got Casemiro, and we need more than that. So, look, I think one of the most important things about sales is that it's on the player to do it. Man United can say to Harry Maguire and Donny van de Beek, you're up for sale. But if the player doesn't activate that clue and start working on it, and what I mean by that is, if I'm Harry Maguire's agent and Harry Maguire says, I want to go because I've been told they don't want me anymore, get me a move, then I'm picking up the phone aggressively trying to find a move. It doesn't seem to me that the agents of these players are that aggressive, and that's probably because, sadly, we've got the wrong profile. Look, bottom line is Man United have got too many players at this club over the years that are happy to sit on their arse and earn a good wage. We've seen it with many players before these two. We've seen it with Eric Bailly, we've seen it with Tellez, we've seen it with Rojo. What's the deal with Ahmad for the season? Well, he's injured at the moment. So, unfortunately, Man United need to become a better club at recruiting the right personality, which feeds into mentality. We've got too many people who are happy to sit on their arse and earn a good wage, and that means you've got the wrong mentality of player as well, which is why we keep watching games like the weekend and going, I don't get why these players are so demotivated and, not up for it. And ultimately, that's because we keep giving out ridiculous contracts to the wrong mentality of players. How in the world is Donny holding up his transfer? It's the club that wants a bigger cut, says Jose. Mark's talking out of his arse. Look, we don't know the full detail of it, but the reality is that, I don't know the full detail. But what I'm saying is, and what I'm right about is, Donny van de Beek is stopping us from buying Amrabat. Now, you might be right. It might be John Murta who's stopping that. And I'm more than happy to say that that could be the case. But ultimately, if Donny van de Beek's not at this club, we can bring Amrabat in. What do you think of us selling young players? I think it's a good idea if they're not part of the plan, to be honest with you. And we've had a super chat come from Sean Turner. He says, I'm sorry, I ain't blaming the players for sale. It's an absolute embarrassment that a club the size of Man United have a budget of 100 million because of a made-up financial fair play rule. It isn't Maguire or Donny, it's the Glazers, says Sean Turner. Yes and no. Yes and no. The players have got to go. If the players won't go, then we can't buy players. Even I can sit that and say that if Harry Maguire and Donny van de Beek and other players won't go, then we're going to be victim of financial fair play. You've got to get them out the door. I think there's multiple parties involved in that. Phil C says, surely it's on Ten Hag. Do you think Pep would let his players not track back? He would drop them, says Phil C. I think he's talking about the playing style there. Let's move on. I don't want to dwell on this too much. Ironic, if player wants to move, his contract means nothing to him, says David Kennedy. Yeah, contracts, yeah, you're absolutely correct. I want to just... look, let's be honest, we're going to talk about Mason Greenwood. Obviously, we know that there was going to be a lot of reaction. Driving up to Manchester this morning, I heard Adam on TalkSport. I heard a lot of people talking on TalkSport, and there's a lot of opinion out there at the moment. This is some of the stuff that's coming out from the newspapers, though. Mike Keegan in the Daily Mail, you may know him for his updates on the sale, which hasn't happened yet. Ten Hag was among those in favour of a return for Mason Greenwood and had reached out to him. There had been work in Man United's analysis department on how best to use Greenwood should he return, given the change in playing style and personnel since his last appearance. Look, I think it's a dangerous thing, but I think we've got to acknowledge that it's not the first outlet and it's not the first journalist to say that Ten Hag wanted Mason Greenwood back. Where do you sit on that? Well, look, I'm not going to hide. I don't agree with Ten Hag on that. I don't want Mason Greenwood back at Manchester United, and everybody knows my stance on that. But some of you do. Ten Hag, it sounds like he did. He wouldn't be the first footballer. He wouldn't be the first football manager that focuses on football over morals. And, I'm not going to say Ten Hag... I agree with Ten Hag, but I'm not going to say that it surprises me if that's the case. In relation to what we're actually going to do with Mason Greenwood, there's talk of Saudi Arabia. There's talk of the Championship, but apparently those clubs are now not interested. There's talk of Italy, Roma, Atalanta. Jose Mourinho, obviously, at Roma. There's talk of Turkey. And also, Manchester United are now going to step up their efforts to educate their players on healthier relationships and behaviours. I want to say two things there. If Man United get a transfer fee for Mason Greenwood, they should put that money, and I'm sure Mason Greenwood would be in agreement with this. If Man United get 5 million, they should donate that money to charities that are set up in place to support those victims of domestic abuse. Because whether Greenwood's been found guilty and he hasn't, whatever his involvement is, we may never know. But what we do know is he's not a Man United player anymore because of those allegations made against him. So I'm not comfortable with Manchester United or the Glazers pocketing money from Mason Greenwood. I think that that money should be going to charity. That's one stance. The second thing is, and I read it yesterday, Mason Greenwood has been at Manchester United since he was 7 years old. What responsibility does Manchester United have to these young players and the adults they grow into? And what I mean by that is, there are plenty of anecdotes and stories and rumours that go on. I hear them when I come up to Manchester and speak to people. You see it on social media. Young Manchester United players, certain young Manchester United players who frequent certain bars and clubs and are walking out of those clubs with a different girl every night. Now, whether that's true or not, they are representatives of Manchester United. And I think football has a responsibility, and football clubs have a responsibility as well, to not just treat these players as, you know, footballers, but try and get involved. Try and get involved in, moulding these young men into responsible young men as well. Because I think at the end of the day, I look at this from a football point of view, and I'm not afraid to say that the videos are there. Before all this happened, I used to say, Mason Greenwood, generational talent, what a footballer. I think it's sad, and I don't think anybody can disagree with this. Whatever side of the coin you look at it, I think it's sad that a player that's come through our historic and legendary youth system that was really talented, I think it's sad that it's ended like this. That doesn't mean it's not right that it's ended like this, but I think it's sad that it's ended like this. And I think Manchester United have to look at how a player that's been with them from 7 years of age comes through the system as one of the better young talents we've developed in the last 20 years and ends up leaving the club because of this. Now, maybe Man United could have done nothing. You know, we all know that some people are beyond help. But maybe they could have done something. And I think United have to learn from this. A lot of people are giving them a lot of stick around the statements that came out yesterday. But I think this can only be, you've got to, when things go wrong, you've got to accept it, but you've also got to try and stop it happening again. I think there's a lot of things that Manchester United could do around their young players. And we've got some fantastic young players in that youth setup with really, really level heads, and they're not going to fall foul. And the vast majority won't. But it's sad when you've got any player that's associated with Man United that gets involved in this. Hopefully that's something the club can look at in the future. Bluntly, do you still feel comfortable with and support Ten Hag if he supported Greenwood's return? I think he's another stain on the football club now, says James. Well, look, I read something this morning, and hopefully I'll be able to give you a statement on this as the show develops. I read something this morning that the Manchester United dressing room was slightly in favour of Mason Greenwood returning. So if you think there's 20, there's more, I know, but if you think that there's 20 Manchester United first team players and the dressing room was slightly in favour, that to me would suggest 12 out of 20 were in favour of him coming back. We did a poll yesterday on whether you were happy with the Mason Greenwood announcement. It was about 50-50. So I think it's fair to say, you know, what's sort of happening here. For me, I was reading something this morning that Mason Greenwood for most of the summer thought he was going to come back to Manchester United, wants to stay in England, wants to stay at Manchester United, and he was expecting that to happen. Obviously, the statements came out yesterday. He's going to have to readdress what he does. And I think the feeling generally amongst everybody was that the most logical thing for him to do was to go on loan and, you know, try and build his career somewhere else. Whether he'd be allowed to do that or not, we'd have to wait and see. But you know, for him and for Manchester United, I just think we just need to we need to move on. The sooner we play Forest and get 3 points and start looking ahead to Arsenal, the better for me, because this thing has been handled really badly and we need to move on from it. This is from The Times. Paul Hurst says, within hours of the announcement yesterday, United had received numerous phone calls from clubs across Europe and the Middle East registering their interest in Mason Greenwood. The Telegraph goes on to say that Man United had completed their U-turn decision against reintegrating Mason Greenwood by Friday evening, but delayed the announcement until yesterday to avoid you know, any issues in relation to the Spurs game. Which for me is neither here nor there. But there was something else I wanted to bring in here that I found quite interesting. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. I'm going to talk about Amrabat in a minute. Mason Greenwood was under the impression that earlier this summer that he would be returning to Manchester United. That's from Mike Keegan. Here we go. This is from The Telegraph. It's from James Ducker. We'll know the truth when the story is sold to OK magazines, as Michael writes. Well, we'll know the side that people want to be put out there. Whether we'll ever know the truth, I very much doubt. At the end of the day, there are people who want Mason Greenwood to play for Man United who are involved in this case. So why would they say anything other than that's going to help him do that? But this is a sort of development on that. This is from James Ducker in The Telegraph. Based on the conversation with the victim's alleged victim's mother, Man United are also said to be satisfied that the alleged victim was not subjected to coercive control by Mason Greenwood. Man United are said to be satisfied that Mason Greenwood did not physically abuse the alleged victim after being provided with an explanation for the social media posts in January 2022. These explanations were not contested by the complainant's family. Manchester United have completed their U-turn. We've done that one. I mean, that's quite interesting. I think we can expect that sort of stuff to come out. So what does that mean from James Ducker in The Telegraph? It basically means that the alleged victim and the alleged victim's family have told Man United a story as to why Mason Greenwood didn't abuse that person and wasn't involved in coercive behaviour. What I would say is that if you look at the timeline, the case was reported in January 2022. The alleged victim wanted to withdraw the case in April 2022, and the police dropped the case in 2023. So when the alleged victim said they wanted to drop the case in April 2022, why did the police carry on investigating the case for nearly a year? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. I think it's all very, very, very grey, and we're probably never going to get the truth. Some people will believe that he didn't do it, and some people will believe that it was in the interests of those around it to say nothing happened. Some people will say, why did I see bruises all over that person then? Who did them? Some people will say about the audio. I think we need to move on, is my honest answer. People are not going to change their opinions on where they stand or where they sit. Manchester United have handled it horrifically. I still think Richard Arnold should walk away and resign. Whatever. Everybody I've spoken to, whether they wanted Greenwood back or not, are not happy with the way United have put statements out and the way they've handled it. Manchester United are not the police. Manchester United are not investigators of alleged assault and sexual abuse. Manchester United are a football club, and they're putting statements out like there's some sort of authority on somebody's guilt. I think it's a very dangerous precedent to set. I think it's very arrogant. I think the club have handled it terribly. And I think whichever way you look at it, everybody is left confused, frustrated and angry. And that is no way to run any organisation. If I was a brand, if I was Adidas or someone like that, I'd be appalled that my name is on the shirt of Manchester United at the moment in relation to how Manchester United have publicly conducted themselves around some really sensitive issues. Let's not forget, a lot of these brands withdrew from Mason Greenwood instantly when allegations were made. And Man United have put statements out that have not clarified anything. and are very, very dangerous. So, look, everyone's going to have their opinion, respect it, but the honest thing is, and I've spent many hours thinking about this, 2 hours this morning driving up to Manchester thinking about it, and there is nobody out there, nobody out there that can give me a definitive, well, that's what happened, this is what should happen, this is what shouldn't happen. If Mason Greenwood wore a Man United shirt on Saturday, or he never wears a Man United shirt again, I think we're all left with, I don't know whether that's the right decision or not. And that's shocking, really. So the only thing we can do is move on. We're going to keep getting drip-fed story after story after story. But my mind is this. Every story we get now, and I know it was a joke about OK Magazine, any story we get now, Man United want to protect themselves and make out that they've done a good investigation. Mason Greenwood wants to start playing football again. The family of his partner and him want him to play football again. Nobody logically is going to come out and say anything that's going to cause a problem to that anymore. So we're never going to establish what the real truth is. I was listening to the radio today and somebody actually made a good point. In a way, it would have been good if it went to court. So all the evidence could have been laid out in public, and if he'd been found not guilty, he'd probably be back playing for Man United. If he'd been found guilty, everyone would know what had happened. I think it's a weird logic, but I can sort of understand it. But then again, we're just the public. Should we know the truth? Should we know the truth about everything? I don't know. And I find myself having spent 10 minutes, at least, talking about something that really we don't want to be talking about anyway, do we? We want to move on. And I think that's what we have to do. I think the best way for us to move on is that United move quickly, which I know is, it's like asking for snow in the desert. But we need to move on quickly. We need to, Mason Greenwood needs to go and move on with his career, and Man United need to move on with their season because it's been shambolic. And I just don't think the answers that people crave will ever be known. I think the whole situation has left a bad taste in everybody's mind. What's your thoughts on Amrabat, Mark? Well, I spoke about this last night. Hi, Mark. Why did we treat... It's a good point from Karan. Hi, Mark. Why did we treat a club legend like David de Gea in such a shameful way and yet seem to be giving so much leeway to Maguire and others? Karan, what a great way to move things on. Can I just say that question, that answer, that statement is absolutely brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. And what a great way for us to move on and move back to Manchester United. I thought the treatment of David de Gea this summer was disgusting, and I think we can all agree with that. I thought the recruitment of Onana made sense, but I thought the way that we treated him was badly. Geordie says, we've club legends who've been just as bad. Did the fan base suddenly grow a conscience? Virtue signalling and mob mentality has made this messy. Should the fans have a say when we don't have all the info, says Geordie. Interesting point. Interesting point. I'm not even going to come back on it because I think sometimes a statement is made and it's there to land and everyone can have a thought. Pellistri deserves his chance at the weekend. He shouldn't have to prove himself over Anthony, says Cyril. Well, just Pellistri is an interesting one. Apparently might be going on loan to Sheffield United. He's the only player who can get the ball and run to the byline. And he's certainly the only player on the right-hand side who can do it because he's right-footed. Should Pellistri be even leaving? But going back to the David de Gea thing, and we spoke about Maguire at the start, I thought the treatment of David de Gea was disgusting. Whether the outcome was the right thing to do or not, as I say, I think Onana as a ball-playing goalkeeper is obviously better than de Gea. But the way we took a club legend and just basically humiliated him over the period of 2 weeks in June and early July was disgusting. And then the way Harry Maguire can just stay and decide he wants to stay, obviously, I think the reason for that is that because Manchester United have got a player that's out of contract and then they've got a player that's in contract. I don't think it's fair to say that United have targeted De Gea because he's foreign or because he's a goalkeeper or because of any other reason, and they've let Maguire stay because he's English or whatever. the bottom line is De Gea got treated badly because he was out of contract and United had the power to treat him badly. The reason Maguire's still here is because he's under contract and he's more powerful than the people at Man United. It's the tail wagging the dog, isn't it? They could treat De Gea like that because they had 100% of the power. He was out of contract. They can't treat Maguire like De Gea because Maguire's got all the power because United are weak. So that's what that's all about, effectively. On Amrabat, there is an update from Fabrizio, but it's the same update he gave us on That's Football yesterday. Man United still see Amrabat as a priority signing for Manchester United, but until they move players on, they can't do anything about it. And Atletico Madrid are a potential threat when it comes to Amrabat because they're admirers of Amrabat. I think it's going to be a very interesting next few days. And when I say next few days, I'm talking about a week on Friday. You know, between now and a week on Friday when the transfer window closes. There are players that are available for Manchester United that they can go and get. And I think that, for me, 100% revolves around the midfield. I'm tired of seeing that United midfield get dominated. I'm tired of, bitter, agenda-driven pundits highlighting Casemiro and not understanding the game of football. He is on his own in that midfield and he is being overrun. And certain pundits are using that as an opportunity to say that he's not as good as Declan Rice or he's not as good as a Caicedo. But Declan Rice has got players around him. Thomas Partey's tucking inside. He's got Odegaard and Havertz who actually do track back. Casemiro's just on his own and he's getting overrun. That's not a reason to say that Casemiro is a bad player. We need to invest in that midfield very, very quickly. We could end up in a situation where we get Gravenberch and Amrabat. We could end up in a situation where we get none of them. And I think that is the most crucial thing for United to sell. But I'm as frustrated as you. I mean, I find myself sat here going, it seems to me that we've been having this conversation for at least a month where we're saying we need to sell to buy, but we can't sell. And the players we want to sell, it's so logical. Lifestyle Tube says, I was abused when I was 9 and stuff like that make you do wrong things, but I had support, so we don't know what people go through in life. They should educate him instead of casting him out, says Lifestyle Tube. Thank you very much for your comment there. Very brave. And Amrabat and Gravenberch, we will be there, says Terp. On a centre-back, we could end up with a situation where we get Gravenberch, Amrabat and a centre-back by next Friday. We could end up in a situation where we get nobody. And nobody knows what the answer is going to be in relation to that one because it's Manchester United. I think I would lean towards what happened last year where we had a bad start to the season and then suddenly the big checks came out in relation to players like Casemiro and Antony coming in. Do I think we're going to spend another £150 million? Probably not. But I think United are going to bring players in because they have to. And let's not forget, bringing it back to this whole big Greenwood story, United 100% need a positive. They need something positive. They are a damaged brand at the moment. Some would say of their own making, but they are a damaged brand at the moment. Everything about United is negative. United are seen as a bit of a joke. Rival clubs across this country and Europe are looking at Man United and going, what a circus. Some people perceive Man United in a very negative way at the moment. And it doesn't matter whether you're bloody Tesco or Poundland. When you're perceived negatively, you've got to do something positively. The positive PR. So what are United going to do that's positive in the next few hours and days to try and turn the tide of negativity against them? I think the most obvious thing with 10 days to go in a transfer window when you need to buy players is to go and buy some players. I back Ten Hag, but I don't understand why he doesn't want anyone to at least challenge Antony. It's one thing to back your player, but this I don't get, says Dowell. Welcome to Members Club, Gav. I think we've seen this many times before with United and many other managers. It frustrates people, but when it comes to Antony, he is a player that Erik ten Hag is going to keep picking. I personally agree with that, but he is a player that Man United are going to keep on picking. I don't know what's going on with the stream. We had 14,000 watching and we're down to 8.5. Okay. Apparently, we've still got a few problems with the Wi-Fi today. That's why we were late. I won't dwell on for too long then, because I know it's a bit up and down. Would you go back in for Ferguson next summer if you were Ten Hag? Apparently, Arsenal are going to go for him. Apologies for the problems today. In relation to Antony and Mount, I would suspect that Ten Hag will keep picking them. He spent £85 million on Antony a year ago, and he spent £55 million on Mount. They're divisive signings, but they're signings that he wants to make. He is never going to start dropping Antony for Pellistri and Mount for, you know, McTominay, because they're his signings. His reputation rests on those two players. Very similar to what Ollie did with Maguire. You know, it's almost, I'm going to fall on that sword, I'm going to die on that hill. So if you're searching for logic as to why he won't drop Antony or Mount, the explanation is there. These are players that Ten Hag has spent big money on and is resting his reputation on. These players have to succeed if we want Manchester United to succeed under Erik ten Hag. I'm going to end the stream. Some people say it's unwatchable. Sorry about that. Make sure you smash a like on the video. We'll be back at 2 o'clock and we'll hopefully solve some of these problems, unless something happens before. Take care, everyone. Speak to you all in a bit. Sorry for the issues.